The unexpected arrival. The twin suns of Xerion Prime cast their golden light across the crystal mining platforms that floated serenely in the planet's upper atmosphere. Administrator Kel Voshak stood at the observation deck of Central Station, watching the harvest drones collect precious zelenite crystals from the floating rock formations. It was supposed to be another peaceful day in the Zelani territories, where war was just a distant memory, and conflict seemed impossible. The Zelani had built their civilization on harmony and careful balance. Their blue-scaled skin shimmered in the sunlight as workers moved gracefully between the mining platforms, their movements precise and unhurried. They had no enemies, no conflicts, and certainly no reason to fear anything from the vast emptiness of space. Their defense systems existed mainly for asteroid detection, not warfare. Kel adjusted his ceremonial robes and prepared to begin the daily harvest ceremony when every alarm in the station began screaming at once. The gentle hum of normal operations was shattered by harsh warning klaxons that hadn't sounded in over 200 years. His assistant, a young Zelani named Tira, rushed toward him with her scales pale with fear. "Administrator," she gasped, "something has appeared in our orbital space. Something massive." Kel's heart sank as he followed her to the command center. The main display showed their solar system, normally peaceful and empty except for their mining operations. But now, hanging in space like a dark omen, was something that shouldn't exist. A ship. Not just any ship, but a vessel so large it dwarfed their entire space station. It was sleek, angular, and completely black except for strange markings along its hull that seemed to shift and change in the light. "How did it get past our sensors?" Kel demanded, staring at the massive vessel that seemed to have materialized from nothing. Chief Scanner Operator Vel shook his head in confusion. "Sir, it didn't get past our sensors. Our systems show nothing there. According to every instrument that space is completely empty. But we can see it with our own eyes." "Yes, sir. That's what makes no sense." The ship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of their largest mining vessel. Its hull was smooth and unmarked by any weapons they could see, but something about its presence felt dangerous. It hung motionless in space like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. "Have they sent any communication?" Kel asked. "Nothing, sir. Complete radio silence." Kel stared at the mysterious vessel and felt a chill run down his spine. In all his years as administrator, nothing like this had ever happened. The Zelani lived in a quiet corner of the galaxy, far from the major trade routes and conflicts. They had no enemies, no disputes, no reason for anyone to come here with such an imposing warship. "Send a standard greeting," he ordered. "Ask them to identify themselves and state their business." Vel's fingers danced across the communication console. "Broadcasting on all frequencies, sir." They waited. Seconds stretched into minutes. The black ship remained silent and motionless, offering no response to their attempts at contact. The silence was somehow more frightening than any threat would have been. Then, without warning, the ship began to move. Not toward them, but in a slow, graceful rotation that brought different sections of its hull into view. As it turned, Kel could see markings along its side, symbols in a script he didn't recognize, but somehow they looked familiar. "Sir," Tira whispered, "those markings, I've seen them before in the old archives." "What archives?" "The historical records from the early colonization period, before the Great Silence." Kel felt his blood turn cold. The Great Silence was a period in Zelani history that most preferred to forget. Nearly 300 years ago, their people had received strange signals from deep space. Signals that spoke of alliance, protection, and friendship from beings who called themselves humans. Then one day the signals simply stopped. No explanation, no farewell, just silence. Most Zelani historians believed the humans had either died out or simply lost interest in their small, peaceful world. "Bring up the historical files," Kel ordered. As the ancient records appeared on the secondary display, Kel's worst fears were confirmed. The markings on the mysterious ship were identical to the symbols that had accompanied those long-ago transmissions. The beings who had promised protection to his ancestors had returned. "Why now?" he whispered. "Why after all these years?" His question was answered when every communication device in the station suddenly crackled to life, not with words but with a sound that made every Zilani in the command center freeze in terror. It was a distress signal, but not one of their own. It was the ancient emergency code that had been included in those first human transmissions centuries ago. A code that meant immediate danger approaching. The signal repeated 3 times, then stopped. In the silence that followed, Kel realized that the humans hadn't abandoned them. They had been watching, waiting, protecting from a distance, and now they were trying to warn them of something terrible. "Sir," Vel called out, his voice shaking, "I'm detecting multiple new contacts at the edge of our system. Large ships moving fast, heading directly for us." The tactical display updated to show a fleet of vessels approaching Zerion Prime. These ships were different from the mysterious human vessel. They were angular, aggressive-looking, with weapon ports clearly visible along their hulls. Even more disturbing, they were broadcasting identification signals that Kel recognized from the darkest chapters of galactic history. "Drakari," he breathed. The Drakari were raiders, slavers, and conquerors who swept through peaceful systems like a plague. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they couldn't use. Their reputation for cruelty was legendary, and their fleets had never been defeated in open combat. Worst of all, they were known for arriving without warning and showing no mercy to civilians. "How many ships?" Kel asked. 15 confirmed, sir. Possibly more behind them." Kel closed his eyes. 15 Drakari warships against their small mining operation would be a massacre. The Zilani had no military, no weapons, no way to defend themselves. Their only hope had been that they were too far from the main shipping lanes to attract attention. That hope was now gone. "Sir," Tira whispered, "what do we do?" Before Kel could answer, the black human ship began moving again. This time it wasn't just rotating. It was positioning itself directly between the mining platforms and the approaching Drakari fleet. As it moved, sections of its hull began to shift and change, revealing weapon systems that had been hidden beneath its smooth exterior. The ship was transforming from a sleek, peaceful-looking vessel into something that could only be described as a dreadnought. Massive cannon batteries emerged from concealed ports. Shield generators began to glow with barely contained energy. Launch bays opened to reveal fighter craft unlike anything in Kel's databases. Then, for the first time since its arrival, the human ship spoke. The voice that came through their speakers was calm, professional, and unmistakably human. It belonged to a woman, and she spoke with the authority of someone accustomed to command. "Zilani Central Station. This is Commander Zara Thorne of the Terran Defense Force vessel Covenant. We have been monitoring your space for hostile activity. The Drakari fleet approaching your position will not be allowed to harm your people. Recommend you evacuate all non-essential personnel to the inner platforms and maintain radio silence until further notice." Kel stared at the display in amazement. The humans had not only returned, but they had been protecting Zilani's space all along. The mysterious ship that had appeared without warning was actually a guardian that had been watching over them for decades. "Commander Thorne," Kel transmitted, his voice shaking with emotion. "This is Administrator Kel Voshak. We don't understand. Why are you here? Why are you helping us?" There was a pause before the human commander replied. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight of sadness and determination that touched something deep in Kel's heart. "Because that's what we promised your ancestors we would do, Administrator. Humans don't break their promises." As the Drakari fleet drew closer, Kel realized that everything he thought he knew about the galaxy was wrong. The humans hadn't disappeared or lost interest in the Zilani. They had been there all along, standing watch in the darkness, ready to fulfill an ancient promise of protection. And now that protection was about to be tested in the most dramatic way possible. The first Drakari scouts would reach weapon range in less than an hour. The peaceful mining world of Zerion Prime was about to become a battlefield, and the fate of the Zilani people rested in the hands of guardians they had forgotten existed. Kel looked at the massive human dreadnought positioning itself for battle, and felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The humans had come back and they were ready to fight for people they barely knew, simply because they had given their word centuries ago. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant when humans made a promise. The price of protection. The Drakari fleet emerged from hyperspace like hungry wolves scenting prey. 15 massive warships dropped into normal space at the edge of the Zerion system, their hulls scarred from countless battles and their weapons already charging for what they expected to be an easy conquest. The lead ship, a massive dreadnought called Blood Reaper, broadcast the standard Drakari ultimatum across all frequencies. Zalani Mining Station, you have 1 hour to surrender all valuable cargo and submit to boarding. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your facilities and the enslavement of your population. This is your only warning. Admiral Thok Brutus, commander of the Drakari fleet, smiled as he studied the tactical display showing the peaceful mining platforms, floating helplessly in space. Intelligence reports had indicated this was a soft target, protected by nothing more than a few obsolete patrol craft. The Zalani were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful traders who avoided conflict at all costs. This would be the easiest raid of his career. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "I'm detecting one additional vessel in the system. Appears to be a single ship, unknown configuration." Thak barely glanced at the secondary display. "Probably just a cargo hauler that got caught in the wrong place. Signal the escort frigates to disable it after we finish with the mining station." What Admiral Thak didn't realize was that the single ship was already moving to intercept his fleet. The Covenant had engaged its stealth systems the moment the Drakari arrived, becoming invisible to their sensors while maintaining perfect visual contact with the enemy. Commander Zara Thorne stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the raiders position themselves for attack, and felt the familiar cold anger that came with seeing bullies threaten the innocent. "Dr. Chen," she called to her science officer, "are you reading any life signs on those Drakari ships?" Dr. Maya Chen, a brilliant xenobiologist who had spent her career studying alien cultures, consulted her instruments. "Confirmed, Captain. Each ship shows between 300 and 800 crew members. All Drakari, no slaves or prisoners detected." "Good, that makes this easier." Zara turned to her tactical officer. "Mr. Riven, what's our weapons status?" Pilot Jax Riven, who served as both fighter squadron leader and tactical coordinator, grinned as he checked his displays. "All systems. Green, Captain. Plasma cannons charged, torpedo tubes loaded, and fighter bays ready for launch. The Drakari won't know what hit them." Zara nodded. The Covenant was a next-generation Terran Defense Force vessel, equipped with technology that was decades ahead of anything the Drakari had encountered. More importantly, it was crewed by humans who had spent the last 50 years perfecting the art of asymmetric warfare. The Drakari were about to learn why humans were considered the most dangerous species in the galaxy when their friends were threatened. "Open a channel to the Zalani station," Zara ordered. Administrator Kell's voice came through clearly. "We're here, Commander Thorne." "Administrator, I need you to move your people to the inner platforms immediately. This is going to get very intense very quickly. Commander, we have over 10,000 people on these platforms. We can't just abandon our homes." "You're not abandoning them. You're letting us protect them. That's what we've been doing for the past 60 years, and we're very good at it." There was a pause before Kell responded. 60 years? You've been protecting us for 60 years? Ever since the Treaty of Sanctuary was signed between our species. Your great-grandfather was one of the signatories. We promised to maintain a defensive perimeter around Zalani space, and we've kept that promise through 3 different wars and countless pirate incursions. The Drakari just made the mistake of testing our resolve. As the evacuation began on the mining platforms, Zara reviewed the tactical situation. 15 Drakari warships against 1 human dreadnought looked like impossible odds, but appearances could be deceiving. The Covenant had been designed specifically for this type of engagement, built to take on multiple opponents and win through superior technology and tactics. "Captain," Dr. Chen reported, "the Drakari are moving into attack formation. ETA to weapon range is 12 minutes. Mr. Riven, launch all fighters. I want a full spread around the enemy fleet." "Aye, Captain. Launching now." 24 human fighters streaked from the Covenant's launch bays, each one no larger than a Drakari shuttle, but packed with enough firepower to cripple a cruiser. They moved with impossible speed and precision, forming attack formations that the Drakari had never encountered before. On the Blood Reaper, Admiral Thak watched in confusion as the small craft appeared on his sensors. "What are those things?" "Unknown fighter craft, sir. They're moving faster than anything in our databases." "How many?" 24 confirmed, sir. "But they're so small and fast our targeting systems are having trouble locking onto them." Thak felt the first stirring of unease. In 30 years of raiding, he had never encountered fighters that his ships couldn't track. "What about the main vessel? Can we get a clear scan?" "Negative, sir. It's still running some kind of stealth system. We can see it visually, but our sensors show empty space." The unease grew stronger. The Drakari had conquered dozens of systems and destroyed hundreds of ships, but they had never faced an enemy that could hide from their sensors while launching fighters they couldn't target. For the first time in years, Admiral Thak began to wonder if his intelligence reports had been wrong. His question was answered when the human fighters opened fire. The attack was unlike anything the Drakari had ever experienced. Instead of the crude energy weapons they were used to, the human fighters fired concentrated plasma bolts that punched through shields and armor like they were made of paper. In the first 30 seconds of combat, 3 Drakari frigates were crippled and a heavy cruiser was completely destroyed. "Return fire," Thak screamed. "All ships engage those fighters." The Drakari fleet opened up with everything they had, filling space with energy beams and explosive projectiles. But the human fighters moved like they were dancing, weaving between the attacks with a grace that seemed impossible. Their pilots flew as if they knew exactly where every shot would be fired before the Drakari gunners even pulled their triggers. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, his voice filled with panic. "We can't hit them. They're moving in patterns our targeting computers can't predict." That was when the Covenant dropped its stealth systems and revealed itself in all its terrifying glory. The human dreadnought was a work of art and science combined into the perfect instrument of war. Its hull gleamed with the distinctive blue-white glow of advanced shield generators, and its weapon ports showed the telltale flicker of charging plasma cannons. But what made Admiral Thak's blood run cold was the ship's size. The Covenant was easily twice as large as his flagship and bristled with more weapons than his entire fleet combined. "All ships," he transmitted, his voice shaking. "Concentrate fire on the large vessel. Ignore the fighters." The Drakari fleet turned its attention to the Covenant, pouring everything they had into what they hoped would be a quick kill. Hundreds of energy beams and dozens of heavy torpedoes struck the human ship's shields, creating a light show that could be seen from the mining platforms. The shields held. Not only did they hold, but the Covenant seemed completely unaffected by the massive bombardment. It continued its steady approach toward the Drakari fleet, its own weapons beginning to charge for what promised to be a devastating counterattack. "Impossible," Thak whispered. "Nothing can withstand that much firepower." "Sir," his science officer called out, "I'm analyzing the composition of their shields. The energy signature doesn't match anything in our databases. It's like they're using technology we've never seen before." Zara smiled as she watched the Drakari weapons fire harmlessly against her ship's defenses. The Covenant's adaptive shielding system was designed to analyze incoming attacks and automatically adjust to provide maximum protection. The more the Drakari fired, the stronger her shields became. "Return fire," she ordered calmly. "Target their weapon systems. I want them disabled, not destroyed." "Ma'am?" Jax looked confused. "We could end this in one salvo." "The goal isn't to commit genocide, Mr. Riven. The goal is to send a message, fire when ready." The Covenant's main guns spoke with a voice like thunder. 6 massive plasma bolts streaked across space, each one striking a different Drakari vessel with surgical precision. Within seconds, half the enemy fleet was drifting helplessly, their weapons destroyed and their engines offline. On the mining platforms, the Zalani watched in amazement as the human ship systematically dismantled the Drakari fleet without destroying a single vessel. Administrator Kell realized he was witnessing something unprecedented. A species with the power to annihilate their enemies, choosing instead to show mercy. "This is Admiral Thak of the Blood Reaper," came a desperate transmission from the Drakari. Flagship. We surrender. Repeat. We surrender. Surrender acknowledged, Zara replied. You will withdraw from this system immediately and broadcast a general warning that Zilani space is under human protection. Any future incursions will result in the complete destruction of your vessels. Understood. We're withdrawing now. As the surviving Drakari ships limped away into hyperspace, Kel realized that his understanding of the galaxy had completely changed. The humans weren't just advanced warriors. They were protectors who had been silently standing guard over his people for decades, asking for nothing in return. Commander Thorne, he transmitted, we owe you a debt we can never repay. Zara's voice carried a warmth that hadn't been there during the battle. You don't owe us anything, Administrator. Protecting our friends is what humans do. It's who we are. As the Covenant prepared to return to its hidden position at the edge of the system, Kel understood that the Zilani had never been alone. They had always been protected by guardians who asked for nothing more than the chance to keep them safe. The price of that protection, he realized, had been paid by humans who chose to stand watch in the darkness so that others could live in the light.